Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in the workplace and beyond, and we look for solutions. I'm going to introduce my guest to you today, Mike Allen. Hello, Mike.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Let me tell you a little bit about Mike. He is a grateful husband to his wife, Erin, and a father to 5 children. Since 2022, he's been hosting retreats, breathwork, and meditation sessions, and men's circles focused on spiritual connection, awareness, transformation, healing, and discovering and defining core values, guiding principles, and purpose. He and his wife co-founded The Light in Us, through which they host events and classes like mindfulness, yoga, breathwork, couples day retreats, and seminars. His wife also facilitates women's retreats. In April 2023, Mike became a co-founder of the Here Brotherhood, whose mission is to forge a global brotherhood of support and growth through wellness practices and transformational experiences. They've held several retreats in 4 different states, dozens of events, both in person and online, launched a podcast that charted in 2 categories, created an online community of over 7,000 members, and launched apparel to represent the movement. Mike's previous career of over 15 years was focused on strategy-led branding and identity, products, packaging, environmental design, signage, digital and motion applications. He had the privilege to graduate from BYU with a BFA in graphic design and intern at Pentagram. Following that, he worked for Struck, which was then known as Axiom, Johnson & Johnson, Profit, and DoorDash. Mike, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Mike and I have a connection. We both sang in the same choir for one season
That's right.
together. Yes.
The Millennial Choirs and Orchestra.
That's right.
Amazing group.
What are you, bass 1 or 2?
Oh, baritone, yes.
Oh, baritone.
Whichever
so
that is.
Whatever that is, the higher version.
Yeah.
So we're close. I'm a tenor too. So we're about,
cool. Okay.
Our ranges are probably about the same.
Nice.
Well, and I have loved your story and the work that you're doing with Here Brotherhood and just the awareness of mental health.
Thank you.
And so my question is, why the change? You know,
Yeah.
Here you are in marketing and branding and stuff, and then all of a sudden you go into this. Was it something like personal for you? Was it just some awareness that you had? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's always been interesting to me, the idea of meditation. And my wife became a yoga instructor many years ago when we lived in New York City, and she would share a lot of the interesting things she was learning through that practice. And so there was always these different inputs and just a level of interest in psychology and spirituality and the intersection of some of those things in therapies and different modalities and just mindfulness. And so that was always kind of in the background, just an interest of mine from a pretty early age. And it wasn't until around that time frame that was explained there in the intro, around 2022, I ended up leaving my job at DoorDash. And this was the first time I'd ever left a job where I didn't have the next one lined up ready to go.
Okay.
So I was like, I just want to take some time and have a little mini sabbatical retirement,
yeah.
whatever we want to call it. So I left that job, and people would say, so what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. And that's on purpose. Like, I just want some time and space to like process, explore, be curious, see what comes up. And it was during that time, interestingly, I kind of went into a bit of a slump, and maybe predictably, I think this happens to a lot of people when they maybe have an exit or, leave their career, and everything that's attached with career, especially for men, we attach a lot of our identity and worth to our work. And so to remove that and all the structures that are in place there too, and all the incentives and the motivation and the team and the connections, there's so many things that we get through work that suddenly were not a part of my day-to-day life. And at first it was very liberating, and it was, I didn't have to be on Zoom calls. I didn't have deadlines. I didn't have all the things that are sometimes, hard about work. But then after that honeymoon stage passed, I started feeling pretty disconnected from a sense of, greater purpose and from the routines and from all the things that were good that were coming from that structure. So it was in that time I had been contemplating what would it look like to do a men's retreat or event, because my wife had been doing similar types of events with not only her yoga background, but also mindfulness and spirituality and things like that. And so she would come back from these women's events and just have amazing stories and things to say about them. And I was just thinking, what would a men's version look like? And I didn't really put anything into action or start anything until my wife introduced me to a friend of hers who was actually doing men's retreats. And so I met up with him. His name's Brian Hurd. He still does his retreats. It's called the Evolution Project. He's awesome. And the retreat was amazing. And it was funny because I met him on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and he said, "Oh, I have a retreat this weekend and you got to come. You got to just come and experience it." Because he was really excited that I was interested in doing something like this, because it wasn't in a spirit of scarcity or competition. He just said, "I love that you're feeling called to this.
Yeah.
Come and see what it's all about, the way that we do it. And I'd love to see the way that you do it, if you decide to pursue this." Right. So I went to the retreat and had an incredible experience. I felt a lot of resistance going to it initially. I was kind of
like intrapersonal resistance, like your own sort of resistance?
My own resistance.
Okay, yeah.
I was kind of like, I like the idea of hosting one, but I don't know if I want to go to someone else's retreat. And I don't know what it's going to be all about. I don't know who's going to be there. I don't know what they're going to say, what they're going to do. Am I going to be uncomfortable? And and all these things were true, right? Like I did get a little uncomfortable because vulnerability is kind of by nature uncomfortable, right? But it was so powerful and so valuable. And so there were a lot of cool exercises and experiences we did there. One in particular had a very profound impact for me personally, which was the holotropic breathwork exercise that Louis Hamner facilitated. And after that, I left that retreat just on a high, and I went and learned everything I could about that breathwork practice. And for the retreat portion, I had already developed some of the ideas and the itinerary that I had envisioned, and I made some modifications to that based on what I had experienced. And I think it was within about a month of attending my first retreat, I hosted my own retreat. So I just dove in pretty fast. And that first retreat was just with some friends that I invited. We went to lunch and I told them about it and asked if they'd be willing to give it a shot, and they were willing, and we had an incredible experience. And from there, I just kept on going. So that was kind of the story around that that shift into this, and then it just kind of grew and started to snowball a little bit from there.
And I think what's interesting is, had you not taken the break from work, this probably would have never happened, right?
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't have the time. You already had that kind of little resistance to, well, do I even want to do this thing? I'd like to go to the retreat in the first place, the one you were invited to. And had you had all the deadlines and all the burdens of working full time, you just said, well, I just don't have time for this.
Oh, it would have been so easy.
Exactly. The excuse would have been so easy, and you'd still be wherever you were. Who knows where you'd be right now, but probably not doing what you're doing right now.
Right.
And I love that you had the experience yourself first. I remember when I was getting my graduate training, they were teaching us how to do group therapy. And so the facilitators, the professors, they taught the class, and then they were adjunct, so they had full-time practices. And so then for the second half of the class, we did a group, and it was us in the group.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't like this. I don't, I'm not going to psychology to go into therapy, but it was so valuable to have the experience and to see the experience. It was a good time as well. So yeah, I love that was that was kind of born out of your own, experience with that. So why men? Was there something specific you saw in men that you thought that they need this, or was it just since my wife is doing this stuff with women, all this stuff with men? Or
no, I mean it's a good question. I don't know that I have a great answer to why I felt called to that specifically, but I'll just contextually. My wife and I had done things for different events for couples and families. She had done things for women, and so it just was kind of the obvious gap of okay, we aren't serving men in this capacity, right? But I think there's a lot more to, that's kind of the surface level answer. I think there's a lot more to it though. And it is just the state of masculinity today, perceptions of it. Even in saying the word masculinity, I bet a lot of people immediately associate the word toxic with that word because it's so mainstream and it's been so perpetuated, right? And so there's a problem here. And then you start looking at trends in culture and in different surveys and studies, and how just male depression, suicidality, loneliness, the epidemic of loneliness, all of these things have just been rampant. And so there's a real obvious need because the problem has become so big and obvious. And so this was maybe one way to address a very huge problem, and it feels overwhelming and massive. But if there's little things that we can do, to help address it, I think why not? Like, why not put in that effort and try to serve that audience? And then I think even on a more personal level, I grew up with 4 older sisters, no brothers.
Mm.
And I think there's just a little bit of a gap there for me of like having that sense of brotherhood, right? And so in creating these experiences and these communities, it's sort of a way to like create that, you know, as an adult now.
And I think it's something that does need more intentionality around it, just because of, I don't know, just history or biology or culturally, men typically are not the ones that come together and do those sorts of things, you know?
Yeah.
But we need it just as much.
No, absolutely.
As women do. Women, they're just better at it, and it happens more naturally oftentimes. But for men, it's kind of like, no, we need to form an organization. We need to say,
right.
Okay, we're going to schedule this. We're going to go to this. This is what we're going to do. But I don't think that our needs for connection are any different than our opposites. And so one of the things that's interesting about connection is social media is just such a fascinating experiment, I guess.
Right. That we're all living through.
Yeah,
right now.
Exactly. That it was foisted upon us unwittingly, many years ago. But one of the things that I was reading a book, and the author was describing it as it's expanded our range of connections, but had done nothing to deepen the connections that we have. And he talked about the need for deep connection with people. So can you talk a little bit about that and how Here Brotherhood, like how does that, I assume that's probably a focus, is deepening connection among the people that are there. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, it's, I feel like social media for us has been a tool for outreach and for awareness.
Right.
But yeah, the deep work doesn't happen over the comments on LinkedIn or on Instagram, right? But it is a good tool for awareness.
It serves its purpose,
yeah.
but there are other things that it pretends to do that it doesn't do very well.
Absolutely. Yeah. For to answer the, how do we get those deeper connections? It's through those in-person experiences, and there's a variety of experiences that we've facilitated or curated, brought people in, done a lot of different things that are all around the idea of wellness practices and transformational experiences. Those are kind of the 2 core tenets of our mission statement. And so wellness practices, I mean, that includes a lot of different awesome things, right? We'll do guided journaling sessions based on gratitude, or we'll do cold plunges and saunas, exercises together. And for men in particular, I think there is kind of this natural draw to like doing hard things together.
Sure.
There's something maybe primitive in us that craves that, right? And so we have a lot of those experiences.
Killing a woolly mammoth or something like that, right? Yeah.
That's not on our list, but we should consider it. Yeah. No, but I think there's something that goes back like that, right? So, we've done a couple of big cold plunge events where we've had some of the biggest turnouts of any of our events. And I think there is that sort of, I'm going to go do something hard with my brothers, know? And that's the only way that I actually do cold plunges is when I'm with a bunch of my brothers and there's that peer pressure. I'm like, okay, I'll do this, Otherwise, I'm like, nah, I'm good. But then we do go deeper in the retreat settings where we do open up and create these spaces. I think that's a big part of what our work is just to create the environment and the space where men know they can take off their armor, where they can be vulnerable, where they can open up and talk about the real. And where there aren't, sometimes I think men are resistant to get as vulnerable as maybe they feel they need to, or as they could in maybe a family setting or in a, particularly like in a work environment or whatever, because there's just too much at risk there, right? They're trying to protect their families from certain things, maybe even aspects of themselves that they don't want to disclose, or, in the work setting, of course, they're trying to put their best foot forward and show up a certain way. Right. And there's some shifts happening with that, I think, culturally, that I think are trending in the right direction of having more vulnerability and openness be safe and not have these dire consequences, right, in the workplace. This is that other space where there's none of those pressures, there's none of those expectations, there's none of those concerns that would exist in some of these other environments that we typically are living in. And so in this container that we create, there is an opportunity to really open up and be vulnerable. And there is such power in being willing to open up, to express, to connect at a deep level. And that's where that deeper connection comes in, is when we're able to take off the armor and say, here I am, and here's the things that are going great. And it's not all focused on the negative, right? It's we focus on gratitude. We focus on like, what are the wins in our lives? And there's a place where you can actually share that and be celebrated and celebrate each other in that. And there's something really powerful about that that's kind of uncommon.
Yes.
And then you've got here are the places of struggle and of hardship and of maybe things that happened to me in my past or things that I'm dealing with right now that are really heavy on my mind or on my shoulders, right? Whatever burdens we're carrying. And this is a place where we get to borrow a phrase from a scripture, to bear one another's burdens, to mourn with those that mourn, to comfort those that are in need of comfort. And we do that in a few different ways in that setting. And some are more of guided experiences. Some are more just organic opportunities to talk and connect and share with a group of brothers. And so we come into these retreats often only knowing a few people or maybe none of the people in our circle. And by the time we go through all these exercises and all these processes together, I mean, we're bonded. We're brothers. So we arrive as strangers, we leave as brothers.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
As you're talking about that, there's kind of a paradoxical thing that this couldn't be done outside of a group. I mean, what you're doing couldn't be done individually.
Totally.
Yet at the same time, the idea of doing it in a group is very scary.
Yes.
And so, it's the type of thing they'd say, well, that's the last thing I want to do in a group setting.
Right.
But the goals that you achieve can only be achieved in a group setting because that vulnerability that they can express has to be done around other people. And then it's rewarded by this sense of, okay, because I was celebrated or I was comforted or whatever it was, that I needed in that moment. And because of that, then that breaks down that barrier.
Yeah.
And then hopefully these men are going back to their other, circles of relationships in a better state to communicate or to be vulnerable or those sorts of things.
Totally.
It's fascinating because you'd think on the surface, well, there's no way someone's going to do that in a group, being that scared.
Well, let me speak to that really quickly, because I think there are some who have maybe the powerful or transformational experiences through. There's a lot of different tools that we use, right? Some are just very introspective, very private, but there are these guided meditations or these guided processes that they go through, and some people will have their breakthroughs or their moments of epiphany or clarity in those kinds of settings. And then in the group setting, some people are more inclined to open up and get really vulnerable, and they have these powerful experiences and connections through that, while others are maybe not sure they're ready to step that deep into it. And that's totally fine. Like nobody's being forced to, we're not prying anybody open. But what's amazing is once one person demonstrates the power of vulnerability and openness, typically everybody follows suit because they realize this is safe and this is actually really significant. This is meaningful. It's not just let's get together and complain about the hard things in life. Like it's not that at all. It's quite empowering to be able to give voice to the real that so often we suppress or that we just keep, hidden because we feel like we have to.
Right.
And then when we can be our full, true selves in a group setting, one of the most powerful epiphanies, well, there's a couple that people have when they do open up. One is that they realize they're not alone. And that's one of the biggest challenges that I think a lot of people face with their struggles, is that I'm the only one, or I must be the only one that had this kind of experience or thinks this way or has these feelings or whatever.
Fundamentally untrue.
Totally, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So they realize they're not alone, and there's an instant bond and a relief that comes in that, and there's healing in that. And then I think the other thing is they become more aware of the reality of who they are and their purpose. And that is very powerful. I think it's Carl Jung that says, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
That's right.
And there is some work in this type of a setting where we become conscious and more aware of things that maybe we have suppressed or repressed or run away from or whatever it may be. And so to be able to become aware of those things, we're then empowered, and we can experience some powerful change and transformation through that process.
I love that. And when you talk about people becoming real, like getting in touch with the real inside them, oftentimes we associate that with, acknowledging our faults, owning up to the things that we're not so great at. But the alternative is true as well. Being okay to celebrate our goodness and the things that we have going on. I was just talking to my wife the other day about some some drama that we're in some extended family that we're dealing with. And I said, the universal solution to almost every mental health issue is self-confidence. If someone just could be okay with themselves and who they are, then they don't have to worry about their flaws, and they're okay saying when they did something good, because there's all these reasons. Either we hide our flaws, or if we do something good, we say, oh, well, it wasn't that great, or, we make all these excuses. And I think that's part of being real and authentic as well, is not only acknowledging your troubles, but giving yourself credit for the great person that you are. I sometimes compare it to shining a light on the entire stage, because our whole stage is there, and maybe we're at any given point, maybe we're 70% great, 30% not so great, but we just have a spotlight on that negative the whole time.
Right.
And we don't want to invite anyone in, because that's terrible, because they just see that. Let's just light up the whole stage and take it all in and see where we're at. And in almost, I've worked with some pretty shady characters in my professional career in the past in the forensic work I did. And even then, I don't know that I've met a person that I would say is more bad than good. And so especially, those that aren't coming out of prison and stuff like that, most of us, are not in those situations.
No, I love that. I think one of the things we try to instill in those settings is that we are being curious, not judgmental. We're open and we're curious. And what are the things teaching us? What maybe the negative emotions that we're carrying around, what are those trying to show us? What are those trying to teach us? Because there's usually a profound lesson in that. And even the idea of embracing the whole rather than rejecting parts of us or feeling like we have to hide or exile parts of us. But what would it look like if we could turn to those parts of us that we try to hide away and actually got curious about them and embraced them, because that's usually what they are in need of. They are in need of being seen and loved and understood. And there's powerful healing that comes in that process too.
And they can often become our strengths. After work, one of my favorite books is called The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. And there's all these scenarios that he sees in there. And there's this one, I won't describe the whole thing, but it's this man he wants to go to the mountains, which represent heaven in the book, but he's got this little red lizard on his shoulder that's and an angel comes to him and says, well, I can get rid of the lizard if you want, then you can go to the mountains. And they debate, and the man finally decides to let the angel do it. So the angel takes the lizard, breaks it in half. And then it looks like the man is going to die, but he all of a sudden grows into like someone twice his size, broad shoulders and everything. And then the author is looking over at the lizard, and the lizard isn't dead, and he's like, oh, maybe it failed. And the lizard transforms into this giant stallion, and the man hops on the stallion, and they ride off towards the mountains together. And I kind of feel that's the way it is a lot with these negative parts of ourselves. Many times there's things in them that can make us strong, but we have to be curious about them. We have to acknowledge them. And if we just keep the door closed all the time, then that potential is never there.
No, it's such a powerful story. There was a retreat that I collaborated with. It was Eric Robertson, who does the Men Who Love God podcast. We did a combined retreat, and he read that whole passage.
Oh, wow.
As part of the programming. It was awesome.
It's one of my favorites. So if people want to learn more about this, about Here Brotherhood and the retreats, where do they go?
So we have our website. It's herebros.com, and it's spelled the combination of here, both spellings of here. So there's H-E-R-E and H-E-A-R, right? And one of our slogans is I'm here to hear, like I'm here to hear you, right? So it's H-E-A-R-E put together.
That's where I was wondering where that second E came from. Okay, that's where that is. Okay.
That's right. And it's easier to get like a domain name with that unique spelling too. so herebros.com. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. Those are probably the channels we're most active on sharing things. And then the Light in Us is thelightnus.org, and that's where we do more of our combined events for men and women. That's where my wife has her events and retreats on there. That's where we post yoga and breathwork sessions that we do about twice a month. Yoga is a little more regular than that, about once a week. And those are, probably the two best places to find us. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, depending on the season of life. But you can look me up, Michael Allen, on LinkedIn. So those are probably the best places to find us.
Awesome. So to all the men that are listening and thinking, I don't know about this, try it, try it, go see what it's like. And it'll probably end up being like you with a cold plunge. You'll say, you know what, everyone else is doing this and it looks like it's going to be okay. And I'll probably do it myself. And it'll be a great experience.
No, we've heard more than once that people go into it and say, I had no idea what to expect, but I was blown away by the experience.
That's
and
amazing.
It's, if people come with an open mind and heart and are willing to go through these processes, I think amazing things are available at all levels. It's spiritual, it's mental, it's physical, it's social. It's amazing.
Growth awaits.
Yeah,
that's right.
Does.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all the remarkable work you're doing. This is a really needed thing that you're doing for people, and I appreciate it. It makes my job easier as a psychologist. There are fewer people coming to me, which is fine. I'm okay with that. So.
Right. Got to clear up your schedule a little bit, right?
Well, thank you again for coming today. And thanks everyone for listening. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.